Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of our Justice and Pieces guest speaker series. I guess it's probably the last of our election series here. And again, it's kind of a nice bookend because I think about 8-9 weeks ago, we started with the five of you. And I thought, maybe I'll have two or three of these of the paralegal candidates. And here we are, like 100 hours later of election coverage, and it's the five of you again. So first of all, I'd like to just say congratulations to all of you, and congratulations to the entire Good Governance Coalition on getting all 45 seats in the election. So I guess without further ado, and I guess I don't even need the disclaimer anymore because I guess the views are of all of you there individually and as a collective here, but let's turn right to Michelle. So first of all, Michelle, congratulations. And how do you feel now? You've had 2-3 days to kind of soak in the results. Let me know how it feels. And I know you had a little celebration there on Monday. So congratulations, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, JP. It's actually a relief. It's a long time to campaign. And I was part of the organizing committee for the Good Governance Coalition. So I have sat through meetings for the last few years, and it's been a ton of work, but obviously it was well worth it. So I guess being prepared pays off, hard work does, and I'm thrilled to have been reelected, and I'm looking forward to doing everything I can in the name of access to justice at the Law Society for the next 4 years.
All right, so let's go over to Paula.
Hi. Thank you. It's been quite the whirlwind of activity. I'm so thankful the results panned out the way they did. I want to thank my supporters everywhere for me and for all of us as a team. And as Michelle says, like, we're just going to roll up our sleeves, I think, and get to work as best we can for Ontarians and the profession.
Demetra?
Yep, thank you. Hi, everyone. Well, I echo a lot of what Michelle and Paula just said. It's been a bit of a relief because it's been a long campaign. Not as long for me as it has been for Michelle, but I'd say it's been about 8 months, and 4 of those months were in the public, in the spotlight. So I'm relieved it's over. And now it's been a bit frantic in the last 3 days of just answering a lot of personal messages coming in. So thank you to everybody who has been sending in their well wishes, and not just after the election, but also during. That was really, really nice. Every single message that came in, sometimes it came in when I was having a really bad day. So it was really nice to look at my computer and see a really thoughtful message that somebody took the time, 5 minutes, to write to me. And those messages really do make a difference when you're not having a really great day. And I'd like to thank even all the supporters across Canada, because I had people following me all the way in British Columbia. So thank you to everyone. And as Paula said, now the second project starts, where we're in our transition period and adjusting to our new schedule and doing what we said we would do and getting to work. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Demetra. And Deborah?
Thank you, JP. And I want to say thank you to everyone that's here tonight, because I think running with you guys, we were all in the same boat and we were pushing each other along. And I'm just really grateful to have been able to run in this election with such dedicated people and hardworking people. Elections are hard. And I think we knew that before coming in, but really being in it and pushing through it, I'm so relieved to be on the other side, to be honest with you. And I'm also really excited to see what we are able to do with the Law Society, the changes we're able to make, just the way that we're able to advocate for the people of Ontario and for our profession. So I'm really excited about that. And again, JP, I thank you for taking the time to do all of this election coverage. I think it was really helpful, not just for people who were voting, but also for us as candidates to be able to get our thoughts together and just really be able to tell people why it is that we are doing what we're doing. So yeah, I'm excited to get started. I'm excited to work with these 4 people. And I look forward to seeing what comes out of the next 4 years.
Mike, congratulations as well. Any words from you about the last few weeks there at the elections?
Yeah, thanks, JP. And yeah, I just want to say it's thanks to these 4 wonderful women that had the opportunity to get to know better. And it's been great working with you. I'd like to thank everybody that supported us, everybody that voted for us. And also like to thank the other candidates. You know, and it's not an easy thing to do, to put your name forward and sort of suffer the slings and arrows that are thrown at you. And you know, without them, that this is part of the democratic process. And I've been on the other side in other elections, so I understand what it's like to, you know, put your whole, you know, put everything you have into it, put your heart into it, and not come up with the result that you know that you hope for. So thank you for those candidates for putting their names forward, and I hope that you'll stay a part of the you know, advocating for the profession, and that you'll get involved in other ways, you know, even though you haven't been elected as a bencher. So I know, yeah, the last couple of days have been a bit of a whirlwind. Monday morning was a relief. I was happy to get the results. I was happy it turned out the way it did. You know, you talk to people, you get a sense of what's going on, but you never know, right? So so I was kind of glad when those results came out and I read the 5 names. I was happy that we were all able to get elected. And it's been kind of a bit of a Monday was answering, like Demetra said, sort of answering people's messages, and a lot of people who I hadn't even had a chance to speak to during the election reached out and sent their well wishes. So thank you to them. And yeah, now it's just sort of you know, getting organized, getting, you know, making sure we've got everything we need with the Law Society, and the orientation coming up next week, and the week after, and then convocation on the 25th. So yeah, ready to sort of roll up our sleeves, work hard, and you know, for in the public interest and access to justice, and to bring the paralegal perspective to convocation.
Now, certainly, while it's fresh here, and you've talked about kind of that feeling Monday morning, but I mean, look at this result, right? I don't know if anyone, you know, even maybe the most optimistic of your supporters could have predicted 45 for 45, right? I mean, I think certainly unprecedented, and again, you know, the results, I think, maybe speak for themselves in terms of, certainly on both sides. But you know, I looked at the voter turnout was higher than the last time, and it seems there was, you know, a clear a result here for the 5 of you, and certainly the other 40 Good Governance Coalition members that were all elected. Now, given that result, I mean, how does, you know, and I know that you've obviously talked to some of the others from the lawyer side, but given that result, Michelle, I mean, certainly goes back, you know, years for you in how convocation was. But what are your thoughts, and how does that kind of bode well for you in terms of, you know, May the 25th, when the 45 of you, I don't know when the lay benchers come in, maybe you can touch on that as well, but how does that bode well with, you know, you're sitting virtually or in person, and you're going to see all of the people that you campaign with, and how do you feel about that and the result overall?
So I'm super excited. I really am. I met some of the candidates over the last few years, and some more of them just Monday night at the victory party. I am especially pleased that we have such a diverse group. It's the first time we have gender parity, which I think is awesome. We have people from every walk. We've got lawyers from the legal clinics. We have, you know, lawyers from smaller towns, sole proprietors. We've just got a huge mix, and it makes it super interesting when you're talking from one to the next to the next. I think the thing I like about it is that, you know, in the last convocation, it seemed combative most of the time. And you were always kind of waiting for somebody to, you know, come up with some motion from the floor that was going to detract from what we were supposed to be addressing. And, you know, I don't think we're going to have that with this group. This group understands governance. They understand what our fiduciary duty is. And the whole idea is to bring back that respect to convocation and address what it is we're supposed to be addressing. I mean, if you look at some of the candidates that we ran against, you know, some of them talked about, you know, I'm going to fire the complaints commissioner and I'm going to, you know, like that person's not our employee. And if you understand governance, you know that, you know, the CEO is your employee and that's it. There's, you know, not the others. So it will be enjoyable to work with people who understand governance. And the lay benchers are appointed by the Attorney General. And my understanding is that we may not know until June whether or not the current lay benchers will be reappointed or who will be appointed. So there are 8 lay benchers, and I love the lay benchers. They've got no skin in the game. They are all about access to justice and what is in the public interest. It's super interesting to talk to them because they don't, you know, they don't have that paralegal hat or that lawyer hat. And so I'm really excited about this next convocation.
Paula?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, from being an outsider looking in and have been following convocation all these years and my board experience with the CCLA, you know, I sent my resignation letter in because it is a conflict now that I'm a bencher. And I put in my letter that it feels like I'm leaving home for the first time. That has been my home for 10 years. And I have been treated so well. You know, so it feels bittersweet, you know, and they've all sent me lovely congratulatory, and they said, well, you know, you can advocate now, you know, province wide, right? Sort of thing. It's just the next step in your journey. So it's been you know, having watched it and, you know, talking to Michelle over the years and Kathy and Rob and Marianne, you know, they've all offered their, you know, saying, well, you know, we're here as a resource if you need us. You know, we've got Michelle at the helm here to, you know, to walk us through, you know, all the pitfalls that we may come into. So I think it's going to be a learning curve at the beginning for all of us. But understanding governance is the most important thing, as Michelle says, because if you don't have a grasp of that, you're going to stumble, right? And you're going to, what I like to say, open your mouth to change feet. And we don't want to do that. Right. So, you know, we're gonna learn and build our relationships with staff, with the other benchers. So I have an advantage already with our East Region benchers. You know, that got elected, the lawyer benchers. I've known Nia for, you know, a long time. She and I used to work at the same firm. So Nia and I have a previous relationship. Mitch Kitagawa, you know, as well, we have a previous relationship as well. Natalia Rodriguez, I'm just getting to know her as well. So we've all sort of joked that we're all going to rent the 4-seater on the train to come down for convocation. So we've already established, you know, we're already starting to relationship build sort of thing. So I think that really is going to go a long way. And I don't think we're going to see the same fractious, you know, convocations that have been going on for the last 4 years. So I remain really hopeful that this is going to be a civil, you know, meeting of the minds and discussions.
Thanks, Paula. Dimitra?
Yeah, I echo a lot of what they said. I mean, I've already seen in our interactions throughout the campaign, because obviously we've been having meetings together, you know, in our small group, but also in our bigger group. We've started building relationships. I didn't know a lot of the candidates that were running from the lawyer side. So through this process, though, I've had interactions with them, and I'm really excited about, you know, building from there. And like they said, we have the building blocks to get us going. And we have our support team on the outside that's done this before that can help guide us. So I think those two pieces together and understanding, like I said, the steep learning curve, like right now it's orientation week next week. And we've already received our 300, 400 pages of the orientation materials. So at the very beginning, you're front loading with what you need to learn to get you going. And it's just right now, one foot in front of the other. And so I'm hopeful, and I could see already through our interactions that I do see it being civil. So we'll just go from there. Right now, I'm not seeing red flags at this point. So I'm happy.
Thanks. Deborah?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely say that from the outside looking in, the idea of being at convocation really did scare me. And so when Michelle first asked me if I thought I should run, if it was something I thought I wanted to do, I said no, because I was like, I can't imagine being in that arena. And that's what it looked like, an arena, and just fighting all the time. And it looked really scary. But I'm really glad that I changed my mind. And I did that because I actually had encouragement from people who have been doing this type of work with me in the past. And because of their encouragement, I really felt like I could do it. So I'm actually on the board of directors with Legal Aid Ontario, and I was on that board, or am on that board, with Jennifer Gold. And she's one of the elected benchers outside of Toronto. And then John Callahan, actually, I was on the board with him. He's no longer there, but we were on that board together, and working with them was really pleasant. And it was an opportunity for us to exchange ideas. We learned from each other. It was always a space where people asked questions and you didn't feel like you were asking any stupid questions. You also didn't feel like if you were sharing that you were oversharing. It was a very nice place to be. And so I feel the same way with this group of lawyers. I don't know many of them, there's a lot of them, but I have gotten an opportunity to know a few. And even when Paula and I were on, we were on the Teams call the other night for the election party. It was so nice to kind of sit there on that call and talk to them. And it was just a normal conversation. And we didn't feel like we were less than or anything like that. So I think it's going to be a really great opportunity for us to share ideas and us really to bring the paralegal perspective. And we'll have people who will listen to us. And I really am looking forward to building more relationships and seeing what work we can do together.
Thanks. And finally, Mike? I think you're on mute.
I don't think that anybody, certainly I did not expect, we were hopeful that we would elect all 45 people or even, amongst the group, the 5 paralegals. I don't think that anybody in their wildest imagination thought that all 45 would get elected. Even again, even amongst the 5 paralegals, there was, again, you never know. I thought, if we could get 3 or 4 people elected, that would be great. But, the fact that we got all 5 was fantastic. Very happy with that result because regardless of the fact that, we ran together and they were all together, when I looked at the list of candidates, I really thought that, that we were the 5 best candidates, based on a number of factors. So I'm really, really happy about that. And then looking forward to going to convocation. I know, working with the group, we've already sort of been part of the team, we have worked together, not on governance, but on getting elected. And I know that our input was appreciated and valued. We had input on various different things and we were listened to. So I think that bodes well for us. One of the other things that I found that I think is going to be a benefit to convocation is that on that group of 40 lawyers that were elected, there are quite a few of them that have a lot of governance and experience and knowledge. I know that some of the things that were coming out that we were able to read in the emails that were circulating amongst the group, I was just like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. And so it's good that we'll have those people there to do that. And in addition to that, I know that we've got Michelle, who's been there for 4 years already, and can sort of help the group of us kind of get our bearings to show us where the washrooms are at the Law Society, that sort of thing. And I know that already, like even during the election, but since the election, we've had the former benchers reach out to us and reach out to me for sure, and let us know that they're there to give us a hand and help us out. So they're certainly gone, but they haven't left us, so they'll be still involved, and I'm glad we'll have that resource.
Now, certainly, I mean, I think, and I've had so many of these talks with all of the Good Governance Coalition members of, essentially at the time, obviously a part of the election, but now you were a group of people coming together, and from the lawyer side, obviously in response to 2019. But now that you're all elected, I guess now the microscope, you're all under the microscope, so to speak, because it's all 45 of you, right? I mean, plus of course, the lay benchers as well, and Professor Alford that steps up because of sort of the with the role of treasurer for Jacqueline there, right? But to a large extent, right? I mean, that means that a lot of the things that you'd like to do, I mean, comes out and the ability to discuss. But I think one of the things that certainly from talking to I think 36 of you now in total is that it's not like I had 36 of the same interviews with the same answers. And I think a lot of people think, well, hey, are you guys just going to, it's like, some people call them the cool kids or whatever, right? But it's, is this something like everyone's just going to rubber stamp what comes through because you're all part of the same coalition and you're all going to kind of have the same views? So what would you kind of say of how do you expect now with that group going into convocation, how convocation is kind of going to be? Or, I mean, maybe, I don't know how much from behind the scenes in terms of all these meetings and phone calls and WhatsApp groups of, did everyone kind of agree to things? And I know maybe you can peel back the curtain now after the election and share. I mean, if, there's a lot of diverse voices there from different, as you pointed out, legal aid clinics, sole proprietors, people from Cornwall, from big Bay Street firms, paralegals, lawyers. So how is that all going to kind of come together? Or, is there any sort of truth to this? Well, hey, it's a group, but they all got elected. So it's like, if you elected, Doug Ford to a majority government, you're going to get, what Doug Ford wants. So Michelle, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, I can definitely tell you that we are not all going to agree on everything. In fact, I suspect quite often we may not agree on even the barest of things. Let's take, for example, governance reform. We're a big board. 53 people, it's huge. And if you do any research about boards of governors, it will tell you that no board should be larger than 20 people. And so when we talk about board governance, and we did the other night, the 7 people I talked to all had different opinions. So, we should be this many, we should be that many. We should have a skills matrix. We shouldn't have a skills matrix. Some of us should be elected. Some of us should be appointed. I mean, everybody's got a different opinion, and that's the beauty of it. And I suspect you're going to see that over the next 4 years. And, it's healthy to come from different points of view. And hearing those different points of view, and typically that happens in committee, you listen to what people have to say, and then you step back and you think, okay, now we have to figure out how are we going to compromise to do what's in the best interest of the public. We need to find the middle of the road. And how do we do that? And so I think that we are going to have thoughtful and respectful debate. And that's what I'm looking forward to. That's what I thought I was getting 4 years ago when I got elected. And frankly, I felt cheated. I really did, because I kept thinking, everybody else kept saying, this is not the experience we had our first term. You know, you're missing out. And it was like, well, I guess it is what it is. And then on top of that, we had COVID. So that was a huge difference. But I do think that the important piece, and we've mentioned it once before already, is to understand how governance works. And the folks that have been elected understand how governance works. And then on top of that, you have to be informed, and you have to understand what the issues are. I believe we've elected people who are informed and who do understand the issues. So I think it's going to be super interesting, and I'm excited.
Paula?
Yeah, I echo all of that, because honestly, I mean, just if we just take it back to just us group of five, like I didn't know Deborah when I came in, and I didn't know Demetra when I came in. Mike I had known from my last election, and Michelle I got to know through the last election, right? Sort of thing. So for me, this is my third election. So having seen the personalities, and I have had different experiences. I've run a private practice. I still run a private practice. I also teach, and I was a coordinator. So I have a lot of different hats and perspectives on a lot of the issues. And so people, you know, we've seen comments, oh, well, they're all gonna, you know, be a collective hive. And, you know, they've almost, you know, attributed us as being the Borg, right? So, I mean, you know, how silly is that, right? Kind of thing. Like, we do have our own thoughts. It's about, and I had said this to you in my my previous interview, it's about, you know, using your ADR skills, right? Sort of thing. Like, we're not always going to agree. And at some point, if I'm the oddball out or whatever, for the collective good, I might have to say, okay, well, I'm just going to back off on that, right? Because everybody, that's the democratic process. So understanding that and being respectful. And I think the group of us that have been put together here by Michelle, I must say, you know, she's picked a really good group. So I honestly do not think that there is going to be a fracture, you know, that kind of a relationship in any of this. I think we respectfully understand respectful debate, exchanging of ideas, exchanging of opinions, and know when to, you know, move and back off, right? Kind of thing. And having that, you know, board experience for me, you know, I think that's, I believe what Michelle says, that I think that this 4 years, and especially for her, because she is an incumbent, is going to be a different experience for her. And I hope more pleasant, you know, kind of thing. But us coming through the door, we don't know. We've heard about the struggles that the previous benchers had in the last 4 years. We can only imagine what that might be like. But I'm hopeful that this, you know, there's, you know, if you take the results of the FOLA answers, you could see that there was, even though they're good governance people, they all had very differing opinions on some of the paralegal issues. And so just because they're all good governance, then they don't see some things the way we do. And it's about having respectful debate. But as Demetra said, I don't see any huge red flags right now, right? So I'm hopeful.
Demetra, how about you?
Just to repeat the question, it was, do I think that we're going to get along and that everyone's going to be saying the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, essentially you have 45,
yeah.
You know, the whole group is elected, right? So does that mean, you know, that, you know, it's like, you know, when you have a majority government in federal or provincial elections, right? And, you know, the whip or whoever, the inner circle is like, okay, here's what we want. And everyone just kind of votes along the lines there. So what are your thoughts on that? Or maybe you can kind of give us some insight of just even, you know, the process here, you know, getting ready to get to this point, if everyone was kind of lockstep with each other.
Absolutely not. I mean, I saw it and it was in my inbox every day. So I saw many, many opinions, and thank God the emails grouped together as a conversation, because everyone, lawyers, paralegals, we like to talk, we like to share our opinions, and people were sharing their opinions. And often it was like, oh, I agree with this piece, but I don't really agree with this one, and here's why. And so there was not on every single issue was it like 45 answers, but there were several people providing feedback. And so I saw with how that interaction was happening, that when people did disagree, I mean, they did it respectfully, and then they gave their side of it. and some of them even changed when they got evidence to back up why we should go left instead of going right. And in terms of them listening to us, I did find, and I was happy to see this, that like even with like marketing strategy, when we were giving some suggestions on what we wanted to do, because our group for paralegals have different issues and we wanted to market in a certain way. And so when we were conveying, our suggestions on what we should be doing, well, they went with it. And then the lawyers actually took our advice and did it for themselves as well. And so I'm hopeful that in terms of how we were interacting together, that'll just continue. So, like I said earlier, I didn't see any red flags in that respect. So I was really happy to see that, when we did give our opinion, it was heard. I mean, sometimes because there's so many emails, you had to say it more than once because you couldn't find the email anymore where the question was asked or where your answer was. But I think as long as we have a good document management system and a way to track all of the opinions and the feedback, I think we'll be okay in terms of that collaboration.
Thanks. Deborah?
Yeah, I would agree with what Demetra said about the emails. That's an excellent example of how we debated. There was a lot of debate going on over these past few weeks, and it was healthy debate. Like nobody was ever disrespectful, and everybody's opinion was always valid. And so I really liked that. Even like paralegals and lawyers debating together, like they were respectful of our opinions as well. And so I don't believe that 45 people could agree on one thing anyway. I don't see how that's possible, especially 45 legal practitioners. Like how on earth do you think that, I can't imagine how anyone could think that 45 legal practitioners could say, oh yes, we all agree on this one thing. That's not gonna happen. I don't think there's a world where that would happen. So I do believe that there will always be healthy debate. We'll always have our own opinions, even throughout the election process. Even though we pooled our resources, we worked together to get ourselves through this election, we all had our own platform. We all had our own ideas and things that we wanted to change and things that we wanted to see. And even if you go back and read those platforms, you can see how different they are. One of the things I will say that I'm happy about is the fact that this group does agree on equity, diversity, and inclusion. I think it's really important. And I think the fact that we were all elected shows that the profession believes in that too. And so I'm really happy and I have hope as far as that's concerned. But I also know we each have our own individual platforms and matters and issues that we want to push forward. And we will definitely do that. And we'll be able to do it in a place where we'll be respected. So I'm looking forward to that.
Finally, Mike.
Yeah, well, I think if people looked closely at our platform, that one of the things was that we, as the coalition, the Good Governance Coalition, agreed on our basic principles. However, one of those principles was that we would vote individually at convocation. That we weren't going to be voting as a bloc. And I think that was also goes back to the idea that we didn't think that all 45 would be elected. So, I think that it was sort of to say that that those that were elected wouldn't vote as a bloc. So that's one of our principles that we would each. And I know that, like as my four colleagues have already said, and I don't know if I necessarily need to repeat it, but I guess I will. Is that throughout the election process, working with the 45 of us, there have been disagreements of how things should be handled or how things should be looked at. And again, there was the input was given, was well received and respectfully received, and kind of discussed and then implemented. So I believe that's that's the way we're gonna go forward. Is when we have issues come up at convocation, each of us is going to have a different perspective on it. Even if just sort of narrowing it down to the five of us, if you look at our five platforms, they were different. So each of us has different perspectives, has different things that we want to concentrate on or focus on. So to say that we will vote together is, we may agree on some things, we may disagree on others. It's just the way it's going to go. But we will, we'll discuss the issues and try and persuade others to our viewpoint, and then vote what we think is in the public interest. And that's I think we have shown. I'm not sure if it's been apparent to the outside, but certainly inside it's been apparent that we've got different opinions, and that I think is how it's going to go forward.
Now, and I think Michelle brought it up, and certainly Mike just there mentioned as well that one of the things that's come up in this election, certainly looking at the results, and again from the lawyer side, certainly more so, is that it ended up being kind of like a party, right? Two parties, and the votes kind of went along those lines. And one of the things that was brought up repeatedly from some of your colleagues, or I mean almost all of your colleagues, was looking at electoral reform, right? Whether it's the size of the 53 is too large, whether it's how many paralegal benchers via the 40 lawyer benchers, whether it's how many votes on the lawyer side, like should they have 40 votes, maybe having less would kind of look at doing away with slates altogether, things like that. I mean there was an article there, and a shout out to Atricia there that mentioned me, but a question I brought up about outside interests can provide campaign funding, right? And then that leads to potential. Well, hey, this group provided us $20,000 to run for election. It's unaffordable otherwise, and now they want their legal software to be used in. So I mean, what are your thoughts there? I mean, in terms of just the election process and potential for reform. I know obviously this is something that's going to be discussed, as you pointed out, with 45 or 53 voices over the next 4 years, perhaps, before we get to concrete movements. But what are your initial thoughts now that you're in this role of what can be done differently in terms of elections? I mean, I'm sure every day you were waiting and waiting and waiting, or and telling people to go out to vote was one thing as well. I think 8 weeks ago we started talking about this when the nominations closed. But Michelle, I'm sure you have some ideas there. And again, I'm not going to hold you to it 4 years from now. But what are your initial thoughts about how this could be changed and improved in 2027?
Well, I am all for making convocations smaller. I mentioned earlier, the research shows, the board, it's just difficult when you're so many people. It's also expensive, frankly. And I think it's doable with fewer people. I do. In terms of, slates and coalitions, I think it's really unfortunate that it had the election had to go this way. But the only way we could manage it was to fight fire with fire. So, our option was allow the full stop slate to run another slate and everybody run independently and split the votes, or we organized and made sure the strategy the entire time was to get all 45 elected, and it worked. So I think it's unfortunate. I would like to see slates eliminated altogether. I can't tell you if that's actually going to happen or not, because I think there's been some suggestion that it would be unlawful to rule out slates altogether. So clearly we're going to have to look at that and try and figure out if in fact that is the case, and how do we make it work. But the reality is that I think it's important that people can run independently, and I would have liked to have seen some of the independent candidates get elected. However, what else do you do when you're backed into a corner? I just don't think we had any choice. So now we have 4 years to figure out electoral reform. And I think there's a number of factors we have to look at. I don't doubt for a minute that 53 people in convocation are probably going to have a different opinion about how it should go. You might recall that the convocation before this last one, had a committee that looked at making convocations smaller and recommended that convocation be smaller, and the benchers voted it down. So, you know, this is years later now. We've come a long way, and I just think it's really important that we address it, because if we don't, we might have a similar problem again in 4 years, and we shouldn't have factions or groups or parties or whatever you want to call it. I just think it's important that we don't.
Thanks. Paula?
I agree. And I had said that in my other interview with you as well. You know, I'm not a fan of party slates, whipped parties, that kind of thing. I mean, our coalition was different. We did not have a party whip. So we all joined this because of the equity, diversity, inclusion, and all of those, you know, core mandates. And none of it was ever said, well, you're going to have to vote a certain way. Right? Because had that been one of the mandates, I never would have joined a coalition. Right. And so because it was presented the way it was like, okay, that I can get on board with. And as Michelle says, I mean, we can sit here and speculate, you know, so yes, we all want a smaller board. And yes, we've all seen those statistics, and yes, a smaller board runs more efficiently and, you know, economically, but then you're going to have a group of people saying, well, that's not true representation of all of the areas, right? Sort of thing, or the number of lawyers within the province or paralegals. We did get a letter that was passed around, you know, saying that maybe there should be only 4 paralegal benchers. And I really don't think that, you know, reducing the number of paralegal benchers is the answer at this point in time, as our numbers continue to grow after 15 years. But, you know, I mean, we can sit and poke and speculate sort of thing, but until we're in there, I do agree that there has to be some reform. And for me, I've always said, like, let a candidate rise and fall on their own laurels. And it's not because they're, being whipped in by, you know, a whole bunch of other people. I'm a firm believer in everybody stand on their own merit. We'll have to wait and see what comes and how we unpack that as a group.
Thanks. Dimitra?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what they were saying. I think it was really cost prohibitive to run. And so I'd like to see a lot of changes around. I mean, I don't know yet what the solution will be, but I mean, just to send one email was like through the LSO wired messenger, which is the official channel, was between like $600 to $900, depending on what add-ons you had. And so I think, I know with me, like, I know what my investment was, and it was in the couple thousand. And then that was with having, doing a lot of the work myself, like my website and making a lot of the flyers or any of the assets that I was working with. And I mean, there was always a cost. It was either money or time, but it's just, having gone through it now, I can see that in itself is a barrier to having people run who would want to. And I mean, this whole thing with slates, like, I don't like this either. I would like to see change there, but like Michelle said, I don't know what that would exactly look like, because, you know, you had that argument where they're like, well, you know, that is unlawful, and you need to be able to, what's the word, come together. And the other piece to that I wanted to bring up was with the seats. I would like to see more equity among, you know, the 3 groups that are on the board. I know if it means making the board smaller, I would like to see as many seats for paralegals as there are for lay benchers, as there are for lawyers, because I mean, we always seem to be outnumbered here. And so if there's any change in that respect, I think it needs to be a lot more balanced. So that would likely mean lowering the seats for the other 2 groups and raising them for the paralegals. But again, like, I don't know where we're going to go with that, but there are definitely a lot of things in how the process was done, what it cost somebody. And then one of the big things that came up was how we reach people. And if we can have like a centralized place where the information is. So, you know, when somebody has voted, or so people stop calling you. And like, people were complaining about like how how you reach out to people. So how do we make the system in a way where every candidate running has equal opportunity? And then, like Paula said, you rise and fall on your own merits. So it's not because of other reasons, like you didn't have enough money or you didn't have access to be able to reach people, that were the reasons that would have held you back. So those were things that I found really upsetting as we were going through this process, that like once you're in it, you're like, oh my God. I mean, I knew what it was going to cost me, that there was going to be an investment of time and money. But as I was going through it, like that was really eye-opening to see just where the inequities are along the way.
Thanks, Deborah.
Yeah, I would have to agree with Dimitra about the inequities when it comes to people running, because I think a lot of paralegals likely thought, I can't afford this. I don't have the time. I'm running my own practice. I'm trying to provide for my family. I can't afford this. And I don't have, even if you even have the steam to do it, we all know, anyone who has run knows that it's very difficult just to go through the process. And so that, coupled with not having the money to do it, is really, it's unfortunate. And I would like to see, as Dimitra mentioned, just a more equitable process for people to run for venture. But again, with the Slate Coalition, I didn't like the idea necessarily, but I know that it was necessary. With the full stop slate, everything that they were putting forth, the fact that we knew if we didn't do this, they would do it, and they would have probably been in office right now. That was something that scared me into wanting to run. I just couldn't imagine the Law Society being in the hands of people who don't think that we need to be talking about things like equity and diversity and inclusion and belonging. Like it's something that impacts all of us. It impacts us as practitioners, it impacts our clients, it impacts the people of Ontario. And the idea that there's this group that was really pushing that forward and successfully doing so, it was scary. And so it was the reason I wanted to run. I don't even think that I would have run independently. It didn't even cross my mind. So the fact that I was with this group is what made me want to do it. It's what makes me actually want to encourage other people to run in the future, to really think about our profession and how we can make changes. And I think a lot of paralegals paid attention this time around, and they see that there is an opportunity there. And so hopefully next time we'll be able to have more independent candidates. It did break my heart to not be able to support some people that I saw that were trying really hard. But it would have been to the detriment of our group. And so it was difficult for me to go out and try and bolster them. But lawyers and paralegals alike, I saw people that I wish they would have had a better chance. But at the same time, we did what we had to do. I'm hoping that through the next election, there will be more independent candidates that will be successful.
Thanks. And finally, Mike.
Well, I think one of the things I think we should clarify is there's kind of this notion out there that we were a slate running to abolish slaves, and that's actually not what we said. That we said that we support establishing a working group at the Law Society to determine whether there needs to be electoral reform and whether slates need to be prevented. So it's like, we need to look at it and, based on evidence, based on, best practices, and based on what can practically be achieved, what we need to do. I think, slates are the thing that everybody focuses on, but there's a whole host of electoral reforms that need to be looked at and implemented. Right now, like, as Dimitra and Deborah mentioned, there's no spending limit. Each of us could have spent, tens of thousands of dollars if we wanted to. So there's that barrier if somebody can, in effect, buy their way in, I guess, if that to some extent. There's no donation limit. So like you said, JP, somebody could come in with somebody could have, passed around donations and in exchange for, some sort of future favors. There's no, if you have a donation limit and it's smaller, then, if it's only $100, or as an example, then you're not gonna, there's not gonna be any incentive for any kind of wrongdoing. And not to say that there has been in the past. I'm just saying that the possibility is there with zero rules as it is right now. So I think some rules need to be established around the election process. I think, you know, the rules or lack of rules that are there now kind of stem from when, you know, the Law Society and the practice of the law sort of were, you know, it was a more genteel time, and you know, it was kind of a much different time than it is now. So as far as that's concerned, as far on the issue of slates, in practical terms, I'm not sure how you prevent that. This is sort of the second election where there's been a formal public, you know, slate that everybody knew about. But I mean, I only learned, you know, well, when I got involved in this election that in the past there were, you know, groups of people working together. You know, maybe they weren't publicly a slate, and you know, people weren't voting for all of them, but you know, they were working together. They were getting support together. They were helping each other. So I don't know how you would prevent that from happening. So you know, prevent candidates from talking to each other and you know, working with people who they think would be like-minded, or they think they could work well with together at convocation. So, but I think the bottom line is that this is something that as a whole needs to be looked at, and then I don't think we can come in the determination, go in with predetermined notions of what, you know, the outcome should look like. I think we should go in with an open mind, looked at what reforms should happen, and then implement those reforms.
Perfect. So last, maybe a couple questions here. Certainly in an election, there's diverse, you know, everyone's running. It gets, you know, it's kind of, you know, I know the Leafs won you know, last week for the, you know, first time in 19 years getting into the first round. And then after, you know, they win, they celebrate like you had on Monday. Then you have the handshake line, right, with the teams that lost, right, that was unsuccessful. And again, given obviously an election, there are people running that don't get elected, and certainly Paula, I know you referenced there that this is your third time at it, and third time's the charm for you. But I mean, any sort of words there, and I know a lot of candidates have posted, you know, sort of very graciously. But I mean, again, at the end, you know, looking from the lawyer side, obviously there was still, you know, a huge support for this Full Stop group, right? I mean, their messaging still, you know, I think 5,000-6,000 people supported that. And then on the paralegal side, obviously you had candidates that got, you know, 25-30% of the vote as well. So in terms of maybe looking out and try to, you know, I'm always a person that likes to try to build, and certainly talking to every candidate, you know, everyone had lots of great ideas, even the ones that weren't elected. I think everyone had something that had me nodding and resonating with me. But in terms of trying to build back, you know, whether it's the paralegal community or, you know, the legal community at large, you know, anything to reach out to, you know, some of the other candidates, and again, maybe Paul, from your perspective, and Mike reference obviously being unsuccessful in other things, you know, their supporters and themselves directly. Sort of what would you say, and I guess I'll start with you again, Michelle, to those people and their supporters in terms of, you know, kind of bridging the gaps there, the differences of opinions as we move forward over the next 4 years. I mean, both on the venture side, obviously, but, you know, the OPA, other organizations that are going to be part of the discussions, whether it's electoral reform, whether it's, you know, scope, things like that have come up over the 8 weeks of campaigning here.
So, you know, I think it's important to draw on the issues that were raised during the campaign. I think it's also important to reach out to those folks over the next 4 years and keep them involved. I'll be honest with you. I think that there were some candidates that were unreasonable, and I won't reach out to them because I don't want to be a punching bag. So I have worked really hard these last 4 years. I have listened to all kinds of paralegals with their concerns, their ideas. I tried to bring it back to the table to see, how do we build on it? How can we make it better for the profession and for access to justice? And I think it's important to include everyone. So I've had people email me over the last 4 years and say, hey, this is the problem I'm running into at the Brampton courthouse. They always let the lawyers go first and the paralegals get pushed to the end, you know, and then, you know, we go to our PSC meeting and we raise it as an issue. And then we decide as a group what's going to happen. Oh, okay, so treasurer is going to write a letter to the Brampton courthouse explaining to them that that's not the process. And that it shouldn't be that way. It's, you know, first come, first serve kind of thing. But I just think if I was disappointed, frankly, with the voter turnout, I really was. I mean, we had 310 or something more voters in the paralegal election this time than we did in 2019. And of course, the profession has grown over those years. So I'm not sure at the end of the day whether, in fact, the lawyers had a huge voter turnout. And I mean, you know, they had a serious issue, you know, self-regulation was at risk. And so I think that prompted a lot of people, a lot of lawyers to vote, and I'm glad they were engaged. I think we as a group have to figure out how we're going to engage paralegals so that they understand what the LSO does and they have an appreciation for how it affects them. And once they have that, then they may be more willing to get involved and to exercise their right to vote. I think that's super important. I do think that part of what happened in this election and even in the last is there's so much infighting amongst candidates, and it's deplorable. You know, we're a profession and we shouldn't be presenting ourselves that way. And I think we need to remember that everything you do is scrutinized. I can't tell you the number of messages I got from people saying, so proud that you ran a clean campaign. Good for the Good Governance Coalition, because we didn't see it across the board. And it's just unfortunate. It really is. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks, JP.
Thanks, Michelle. Paula, I guess, and certainly again, you know, you've been on the other end. I know very close. I think 6th the last time. So, I mean, what would you say to the people that were, you know, just a few hundred or so votes short this time?
Well, yeah, I've had to write that conciliatory speech, right? The thank you. It's been lovely getting to know everybody, and good luck to everybody that got elected. So I know what that feels like. And so I can appreciate those that put their name forward. There was a lot of good candidates that did run. Some ran cleaner than others. I ran a clean campaign. I think we all did as a group, ran a clean campaign. And that's what you do, because that's the lasting impression that is left for the public, because all of that is public and you are being scrutinized. So you never blow up a bridge if you don't think you ever have to walk back over that bridge, right? Sort of thing. So there was, you know, it was almost like there was like napalm going on some people, which was, it is most unfortunate, because that is the lasting impression that you were leaving with your colleagues, that if you want to run again next election, that's all they're going to remember about you, going, yeah, no, that's not going to happen, right? You know, I thank everybody who ran. You know, it's important for the democratic process to put yourself forward. I know how hard it is to work that way. I know how hard it is to have people say nasty things about you and troll you, and, you know, just say things that are so unreasonable that you're sitting there and you're trying not to take it personally, but it's hard not to when I know how hard I've worked over these last, 10 years of my career. You know, to have somebody who's, you know, an advocate for, you know, another candidate just throwing bombs at you that are nonsensical. And that's all out in public. So it is difficult. I do thank those that ran. I believe that, I do believe that the voters made a clear choice for civility, inclusion, and the right people that understand the job at hand. And I really, you know, I have to thank the voters, you know, that did choose us, because I think that and I said it from the very beginning, I think out of all of the candidates, we are the best of the five. And I think that the voters actually, understood that. It's not because we're genius or better paralegals. It's about we understand the job that we've applied for. And I think that that's the most important part here. So, I'm happy to have been elected. I'm happy to have been elected with this fine group. And I look forward to, getting, rolling up our sleeves and getting to work.
Perfect. Dimitra?
Yeah, and just maybe if you can repeat the question, because after two people, I'm like, I have my thoughts, but just want to make sure I'm staying on track.
I guess it's maybe in terms of, looking at, the people that weren't elected as well as their supporters, right? I mean, everyone, obviously, like I said, win, lose or draw, right, is going to come back, and they'll still want, their points. Different points were made. Somebody, obviously all of you spoke for me at least, and then others as well raised no points. So what, in terms of kind of like trying to build and move forward as the five elected benchers for the paralegal community, kind of words that you'd say to, either the other candidates or their supporters, or anyone essentially that's listening right now?
Well, I think part of it is, put yourself in our shoes. If you had won, would you want people screaming at you right now and acting this way? But then also, if you didn't win, 2027, that's the year you're looking at, right, to run again. And like Paula had said, you left a lasting impression. People usually remember the first thing and the last thing. They might have a little muddy middle, but the last thing, especially if it got really heated, and there were some personal attacks, that leaves a mark. And so right now, it's almost like you have a 4-year runway to run again. And I think part of that is to build relationships. And if it ended in a really sour way, how can we now turn this around and, put our best foot forward? And I know with, in terms of voter turnout, one thing I found during this election, so through my own personal experience, was that talking to people one-on-one, there were a few people that said to me that this was the first time they had voted. And in some cases, it was because I had a direct conversation with them. So it wasn't necessarily me because of me, but it was the fact that somebody had a very personal one-on-one chat with them, explain things to them. Again, they felt seen and heard, and there felt like there was something in it for them. So that gave me hope. And so that's one of the things also is moving forward that I would like to do is reach out to more people, reach out to maybe the younger generation coming up now that is still in school, whether it's law school or in paralegal school, because that's the next voter base, but also start early, right? If people know what's available and why the LSO is important, and it's not just, taking your money every year, then there's more investment and you have this clear understanding of what's in it for me, because that really comes down to like, what's in it for me to take 5 minutes to vote in 4 years. And so those are the few things that come to mind. And I had some lovely comments from the other candidates that didn't win, wishing me well. And no one sent me hate mail, so thank you for that. But I do welcome their thoughts, and hopefully if we can engage. And I had said this in my last interview with you, I'm happy to engage with people and hear their thoughts as long as they're respectful and civil with me. Yeah.
Thanks, Dimitra. Deborah?
Thank you, JP. One of the first things I wanted to do is actually thank those candidates that did reach out. I think it's really important and it shows grace. And those are the kind of people that I'm really looking forward to working with. And so I think it's important, as Dimitra says, to leave a great impression, a great last impression, I guess you could say, because if you do want to run in the next election, people will remember how you went out. And, when it comes to working with those candidates and their supporters, I actually am interested in addressing the issues, because a lot of them had really good items that they had on their platforms. And I'm really interested in just exploring those and finding creative ways to address those issues at convocation. So I'm absolutely open to hearing from them, to even reaching out to them and their supporters to learn more. And, I just think of it as we're in this profession together, and our jobs as benchers are kind of pointless if we don't have that type of collaboration. So it's really important that we do work with other paralegals that aren't benchers to hear from them what they need, and so that we understand what it is that we're tasked to do. And again, this clean campaign thing, it really did make a difference. And I really believe that that's why we were elected. We didn't expect all of us to get voted in. We really didn't. I think it came as a surprise to most of us. And I think it was our campaign. I think it was the fact that we weren't slinging mud. We were respectful. We were gracious, even when things were being thrown at us. And I think that made a lasting impression on voters, and that they had a different idea than we did, and they voted us in. And then finally, I just wanted to add that I think listening is really important. We need to listen to all of the paralegals. We need to listen to the students. We need to have a really good understanding of what people are dealing with, so that when we're at convocation, we can be bringing those issues to the forefront and really tackling them. And so again, I don't know about everybody else. I can't speak for everyone else, but I'm absolutely open to people calling me. My phone number is online, so I get phone calls all the time. I'm absolutely open to people calling me, messaging me on LinkedIn, sending me emails. I want to learn about why, what it is that paralegals want to see. I want to learn about the issues that they're facing and the ideas that they have. And I want us to be able to work with them together to really make a difference in this profession. Because honestly, next time around, I want to see more paralegals vote. I really do. It was disappointing, as Michelle said, that there were so few of them that voted. And I think it really is that they don't see how paralegal benchers can make a difference. And if we are open to them throughout the next 4 years, I think they'll see that in the end. And the next time they vote, they'll remember that.
Mike, finally.
I think to the candidates that ran and weren't successful, I would say there are many ways to be involved and stay involved. There's as we talked, I think the OPA has elections coming up. There's the local law associations. There's other groups out there, the different networks of paralegals, different advocacy groups. So there's ways to make a difference without being a bencher. And actually, I think probably, to be honest, I'm not even. I think those other ways are probably even better ways to make. You've got much more leeway as to what you can advocate for. You're quite, as a bencher, you're limited. Number one, you're not really advocating for paralegals or for lawyers. You're governing in the public interest. So that's your fiduciary responsibility, and that's what you have to always keep at the forefront. So I think if you wanted to talk about increased scope of practice and things like that, whether I think an advocacy group like OPA is much better way to accomplish that. So that's that. As far as also candidates or people that are thinking of running next time, I think one of the biggest things that you should do is educate yourself on the role and limitations of being a bencher. There were a lot of good ideas put forward by other candidates, but a lot of what they put forward was not within the purview of the Law Society. It was things like I think there was a candidate that had things like legal aid, having legal aid certificates have the paralegals eligible for legal aid certificates. Well, that's not something that's controlled by the Law Society. So, I mean, great idea, but get elected as a bencher, you can't do anything about it. And that's just one example. There's limited time, so we won't go into each one, but there's many things like that were not within the purview of the Law Society. So I think educate yourself so that you know what the role is, you know what you can promise or not promise, or how you can campaign. And I think if people did that, then we wouldn't have these kind of wouldn't be so maybe not so personal, or so it wouldn't be so contentious even. People would just be able to run on their experience and how they would govern, and as opposed to actually trying to make promises that in all likelihood, as not only being one of 53 benchers, you can't promise anything. You have to work with others with the, and at least convince 26 other people that you have a good idea. So making promises is not the way to do it. And so anyway, I think it's educate yourself. And I think we also have to do a better job of educating the profession. There's a lot of people that I spoke to that were voters that didn't really understand what the role is either. So anyway, and so for the candidates that, if you want to run, learn what the role is and campaign accordingly, and also be involved in other areas, in other things. Stay involved and don't go away now.
Perfect. So last thing here, I mean, I give you all one last, hopefully not too long there. Any final words there just for, I mean, certainly your supporters and just the profession at large, right? As you kind of step in and transition. I mean, you mentioned orientation next week. I think there's the AGM on the 10th, and then on the 25th is convocation for the first time. So as you kind of step into this role, and you'll be here hopefully for the next 4 years. And I hope, I know I'm probably tired of talking to me over these 8 weeks, but I'm hoping that we still can communicate every once in a while to stop by and give me some updates, give the students, give everyone that listens what's going on and how it pertains to the paralegal profession. But any sort of final words of wisdom there for anyone listening, and thanks so much once again for taking the time and doing this. I think it's like the 4th time probably we've chatted in the last 8 weeks, and I think this is like Deborah's 7th time talking to me over the last couple of years. So I think you're, after me, you're probably the most heard voice here. So Michelle, I'll turn it over to you. Any last words here for everyone listening?
Well, just to thank you, JP. I think it's a fabulous service that you've done to both the paralegals and the lawyers. So thank you. I'm grateful to everyone who supported us. I appreciate it. I encourage paralegals to reach out to their colleagues and friends, to encourage them to get involved, to ask questions, to realize that it's our profession, and to feel proud about that, and to have a hand in how it's going to shape over the next 4 years. So it's important you reach out to us, talk to us. I return all my calls and all my messages. Well, I'm human. I might have missed 1 or 2. I hope not, but it's super important that we hear from you, and it's really important that you get engaged. And I think Demetra's idea of, hitting people, students and new licensees, it's really important because maybe they understand it will grow over time. I think we have our work cut out for us, and I'm ready.
Thanks, Michelle. Paula?
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. I want to thank all of my supporters, all of the people that voted for me and for us. And, just my East Region group of people that have supported me through my entire, journey with the CCLA and all of the advocating we've done that way. There's a lot of people that have been involved. For the profession at large, stay involved. There's more than one way to serve your profession than being a bencher. And you may be able to do more from the outside than from the inside. And I think that the sooner you get involved, the more you learn, right? Sort of thing. So I think that is very important. I'm anxious to get to work. I'm still trying to figure out the tech and how to book the travel, that sort of thing. So we all just got these really big bundles, and we're like, oh boy, that's new. So we're just trying to figure out, it's our first little baby steps, right? Sort of thing. So, I really look forward to, getting down to the nuts and bolts of the work and see how that works, right? And how we can help, the people of Ontario, how we can help the profession at large, right? So everybody knows how to reach me. I'm on LinkedIn. Everybody knows where my phone number is. Like everybody else, I thank you. And thank you, JP, for giving us this platform to get our ideas out and have the paralegals get to know us. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Demetra?
Thank you. I feel like on the Oscar stage where they give it to you and they're like, okay, well, you've got 30 seconds, go. Well, first and foremost, I'd like to thank you for, like they said, giving us the platform and giving us some footage to work with to make some short videos, in my case, short videos that I could use in, especially during the election period. And the same I'd say for the Lofty Group for taking on the paralegals and doing, what was it, like 19 hours of footage approximately. I'd like to thank my campaign team that helped me get out the word on social media. And Deborah James was the one leading the volunteers. So a big thank you to her. And you probably saw her name up there as much as you saw mine on LinkedIn. And then another thank you to the Good Governance Coalition for leading the bigger group. And then for Michelle for leading us here as a team, the team of 5. And a thank you to my family and friends for the moral support during the last couple of months of sometimes the calls late into the night for moral support when it was an up and down roller coaster of emotions. I mean, I don't think I've said this in other interviews, but it really did feel like the Hunger Games at times, and that I had volunteered as tribute and really didn't know how this was going to end. It was my first election, so I'm glad the people were there. And then finally, I'd like to thank the supporters, anybody who was out there sharing, liking, commenting. You helped propel the message. And of course, like I said earlier, the people who had sent messages through, it really does make a difference that you took like 5 minutes out of your day to write a really thoughtful message. And you never know what the person's going through who's receiving that message. So thank you very much. And in terms of, I guess, what was it, words of wisdom? I'd say, ask questions. I'm happy to answer questions. One of the things I want to look at as I go through this new experience is, and I can't make promises that I don't know what it's going to look like, but I'm going into it looking at how do we make it more accessible in terms of how do we do things in a way that gets people interested and especially the younger generation. Like, so looking at whatever the experience is, how do we bridge that gap so that we meet people where they're at and have them consuming the content the way they consume things right now. So that's kind of where I'm looking at it. Yes, I'm looking at it in a tech focus, and I don't know what the outcome will be just yet, but I do have my eyes set on how do we bridge the gap and get people more interested in terms of, like I said earlier, like what's in it for me and why should I care about this? So that's my plan going forward.
Thanks. Deborah?
Thank you. Again, I just want to thank you, all 4 of you, for running with me. It's just been a pleasure getting to know you. And I know the next 4 years are going to be challenging, but I think they're going to be fun too. And we're going to be coming up with some creative ideas on how to do things. So I'm looking forward to that. And thank you, JP. As everyone else said, it's just been great having this platform to kind of share our ideas and get to know, what people's concerns are. So I thank you for taking the time to do that. I know it has been time consuming. You interviewed a lot of people and I've seen your follower count go up and up and up. So I think it's really amazing. And it's great that people will have an opportunity to hear more from you in the future because you've been doing this for a while. And then I'm just really grateful to the Good Governance Coalition. I've had, like I said earlier, I've met quite a few people over the past few months, and I've gotten some really great support. I will have to shout out Michelle and Jennifer Gold for really pushing me to do this. I really didn't think I could. And just to be on the other side of it and to have been elected, it's just kind of surreal to think I went from saying, this is not for me, to now saying, I'm really thankful to be here. So it's really great. And also Tricia Lewis, she was really helpful during some tough times during the election. Just having that connection and someone to kind of push me forward, I'm really, really grateful for that. And of course, my family, my kids, they were encouraging me. They're older. They knew I was going through something. They probably couldn't quite get it, but they were really supportive. So I'm grateful for that. And I'm just happy to be on the other side. And then I just want to say, to the other people who ran in this election again, like it was a big step. And I know how hard it was. And congratulations for just even holding on for as long as you did, because nobody dropped out. There were 19 of us and not one dropped out. We just went through the whole thing. And so I think that's amazing. And I would say, just keep doing the work that you're doing, because it's important that we keep pushing this profession along. Just advocate for the issues that you want to bring to the table. Do whatever you can. Work with your supporters, work with each other, work with us. Give us a call. Like, really, let's work together. I think togetherness is a big thing in this profession. We are so divided right now, and we really need to come together so that this profession can actually be here in another 15 years. So I just want to say, again, thank you to the four of you and to everyone. And I really look forward to what the next 4 years will bring.
Thanks, Deborah. And finally, Mike.
Great. Yeah, I'll keep it very brief, since I think people have been listening to us now for over an hour, and it's a great thing that if they can do that. So I've had a number of people reach out to me over the last few days. My LinkedIn's kind of blown up with people asking to connect and sending me messages, private messages, and so on. And as I said to somebody, my virtual door is always open. Anybody can get a hold of me on whether it's through social media, through email, through phone calls, texts, whatever. And I aim to keep it that way for the next 4 years. So if there's any question or concern or anything like that, so certainly reach out to me, and I will do whatever I can to try and help you out. And that's basically, I think everybody said everything there is to be said, so I'll leave it at that.
Perfect. So once again, congratulations to all 5 of you. Thanks to all of you for joining me so many times here. And certainly, again, whenever there is something you want to share with the students or the profession, by all means, let me know. And maybe we can have sort of regular drop-ins here and use this to kind of keep everyone informed of what's happening at Convocation. So again, I wish you all the best. And thanks for everyone for tuning in. I don't know how many people tuned in for the entire 80 hours or so, but whatever you got from it, I hope you take that away. And certainly for those of you in the next 4 years, come back and look at how we've progressed from before the elections to the results that the Good Governance Coalition and the lay benchers and everyone else do for us till we get to 2027. Take care, everyone.